As we close out last week's discussion, I want to talk briefly about Song of Songs and then really get into Proverbs. With Song of Songs, I think almost everyone agrees that an allegorical approach to the book is problematic, and that this book seems to be, and indeed is, a book that is a celebration of the intimacy and love between a husband and a wife. I think that there's no reason that we need to feel uncomfortable with this. The move towards allegorizing the text comes from very early interpretive tradition, but that tradition tended to allegorize a lot by finding hidden meaning in the text that just wasn't there, but also this uncomfortableness of the very mature subject matter that is in Song of Songs. It is an adult book. It is a book about sex and love and intimacy and passion and the emotions that are aroused because of that. It is a very sensual book in the sense that, even the first chapter, almost every one of the five senses of human beings, sight, sound, taste, touch, all of that are invoked there. It is a very human book in the sense that it is sensual, and that's okay. I don't. The problem with allegorizing the text, which is what many of you pointed out, is that it tends to ignore, and it does ignore, the intent of the text. There's nothing in the book of Song of Songs itself that indicates that this is meant to be allegorized. In fact, a plain reading of the text shows that it is just a celebration of that love and passion between a husband and a wife. And we should understand that from a larger picture, the tendency to allegorize any part of the text, we ignore the lesson that God, in inspiring the book, we miss the lesson He wants us to get from it. And the lesson of Song of Songs is a lesson about our humanity and what it is to be human, and the type of passion and love that can exist between a husband and a wife. And that's something that if we allegorize a text, we miss out on. And I think that it's very dangerous. We should ask ourselves, why did God allow this to be in His canon? And I think the reason is because He has created us as man and woman, and that when man and woman come together as husband and wife, that is something that is to be celebrated, and that's something that can be celebrated and enjoyed, but within God's standards. The Song of Songs certainly shows that is within the boundaries of God's Torah, of His instructions. There's a lot of room to play and enjoy between husband and wife, and that's something that we should not ignore or necessarily even feel uncomfortable with. Now, there's a time and a place to teach it. I wouldn't necessarily preach from Song of Songs on Sunday morning, but certainly there are opportunities for Bible study, small groups, premarital counseling, even couples Bible studies that can utilize Song of Songs as it was intended, which is this celebration of the love between a husband and a wife. Now, I want to move to Proverbs, and particularly I want to move into the discussion on Proverbs 31, the Proverbs 31 woman. There is debate on this, as on most things, but this is one that it can be difficult to come to a conclusion. Is this describing a real woman who, or something that women should try to be, or is this describing this is a personification of wisdom? My position is I lean towards the idea that it's a personification of wisdom. Of course, there are good arguments on the contrary, and it seems that most of you took the position that this is not wisdom personified, but rather it's describing an ideal woman. Now, there is some merit to that, but I do want to point out a few things, and this kind of goes over to the larger rhetorical strategy of the book. Yes, Proverbs itself is made up, it's a collection of, I think, 7 collections of Proverbs, but it does have, the Proverbs do seem, many of them are individual and aren't necessarily meant to be read, with the one above and the one below. In fact, there's some that, directly contradict each other. Don't answer a fool in his folly, and the next one says answer a fool in his folly. And that's the point of the book. It's supposed to be enigmatic in the sense that we're supposed to struggle with when does this proverb apply, when does this proverb apply, Even if they seem to contradict each other, they don't. They say there's a time to answer a fool in his folly, and there's a time not to. It's this idea of taking practical learned experience and applying it under the umbrella of the fear of Yahweh. However, there is an overarching, rhetorical point to the book that's introduced in the first several chapters, which was the first part of the discussion last week, which is this idea of woman wisdom. Wisdom is portrayed as a woman who is calling out in the streets, as opposed to Dame Folly or Whore Folly. Folly is described and depicted much like a prostitute calling out on the streets. And this idea is that there are two voices calling out to young men, and the book is primarily, at least from a rhetorical perspective, addressed to young men, my son, over and over in the beginning and even to the end. But it's this idea that there are two essential women calling into the lives of the young man. Woman wisdom and woman folly. Woman wisdom, her path leads to life. Woman folly, her path leads to death. And they both are crying out, but the author, the overarching rhetorical purpose of Proverbs is trying to teach the young men, no, do not go after Dame Folly. That leads to Sheol. She has nice words, but she's a prostitute. Go to woman wisdom. Now, why would the author use, at this point, probably Solomon is the beginning of it, but why would he use this type of personification? Well, what is the single most important decision a young man is going to make in his life? And especially after he hits puberty, what is on his mind? It's this idea of women, finding a wife, and the choice that is presented before him is a choice of two possible women for him to spend his life with, and that choosing wisdom is like choosing a good woman to be your wife, in that she brings life and she does not bring death, as Dame Folly goes. And so that's the purpose, the rhetorical purpose of the personification, which, if we look at Proverbs 31, that makes sense why he would say, present this woman as a wife. At the beginning, he's saying, choose wisdom as your wife. Well, at the end, it would make sense that he would conclude the book, whoever put it together and added it. I mean, if this is a part of the sayings of King Lemuel, which very well could be, but verse 10 just kind of comes out of nowhere, so it's possible it's a conclusion to the book that maybe someone else added, anonymously, that's not attached to Lemuel, even if it is the words of King Lemuel, which is the oracle which his mother taught him. Certainly this could apply rhetorically as it's put here, because it has a personification of woman wisdom at the end that serves as a very fitting bookend to the beginning, where wisdom was presented as a woman. Here, again, a reminder. Wisdom brings all of this stuff to you like a good wife would bring to you. And that's why there's so many of these things. No one can do all of this. But wisdom is someone who, if you choose to go to give your life to wisdom, then certainly these are the types of good that can come from it, which is consistent with the teaching of the rest of the book. And of course, there are some parallels. The parallel with Torah in 1:8 and 31:26. This idea of being more precious than coral or rubies in 3:15 and 8:11, again 31:10. Bringing material gain, that's 3:14, 8:21 as Lady Wisdom, and then of course in 31:11. The house building of wisdom in 14:1, 24:3, and the care for the house in 31:15, 21, and 27. Now, none of this proves the case, but it's a cumulative argument that could be made. And I think the most important thing we can look at is at the very end. Verse 30, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears Yahweh shall be praised. Give her the product of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gate. The sense that the book ends with the fear of Yahweh. Well, what is the beginning of all wisdom? The fear of Yahweh. The book begins and ends with this appeal to the fear of Yahweh in the form associated with a woman. It could be argued, and I think it could be argued well, that this is the rhetorical The cumulative rhetorical effect of this is to give the idea that the book is ending with this reminder that these are the benefits of wisdom, and you should choose her because she is as a good wife, and that's someone you give your life to, and you spend your life. The single most important decision you're going to make, according to the book of Proverbs here, is whether you choose the woman wisdom or woman folly. Of course, that's linking that again to the fear of Yahweh, and so the idea would be that it's closing with an appeal to follow wisdom. Otherwise, this kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's a strange ending to a book about wisdom that's talking now about a woman. Rhetorically, it makes sense if he is closing with an appeal, to a reappeal, bookending this call for choosing wisdom. Now, of course, it's not a slam dunk case. It could be argued either way, and there's no wrong in arguing that this is meant to be read as a woman. But I lean towards it as a rhetorical device, framing the book and saying that this is a personification of wisdom again.